Again, good afternoon to our speaker, Antonia Schrader, and the audience here in Zoom and on YouTube. The title of today's talk is On the Road Towards a Persistent Identifier Strategy for Germany. Our speaker is Antonia Schrader, and she is a full-time Open Science Officer at the Helmholtz Open Science Office since 2020. The Helmholtz Open Science Office, established in 2005, sees itself as a service provider that supports the community in shaping the cultural change towards open science in Helmholtz and beyond. Prior to PID Network Germany, on which she is working currently, she supervised the DFG project ORCID DE2 that aimed to support a sustainable implementation of ORCIDs at universities and non-university research institutions in Germany. In addition, she participates in the NFDI working group on PIDs and was one of the applicants for PID for NFDI. At the moment, she also serves as the chair for the German Reproducibility Network. She studied publishing technologies and media management at the Leipzig University of Applied Science. The topic of today's talk are persistent identifiers, or PIDs. I think most of the audience will be a little bit familiar with this term. Persistent identifier consists of defined combinations of numbers and letters that make it possible to uniquely and sustainably reference objects, persons, organizations, etc. They are therefore relevant for science and fair research data management. Well-known examples are DOIs, or digital object identifiers, or ORCIDs, which means Open Researcher and Contributor ID. So Antonia Schrader, the stage is yours.
Great, thank you very much for this very friendly introduction. So give me a few seconds to share my slides. So I think you can see them now.
Perfectly, yes.
Great, yeah. So again, welcome. I'm very appreciate this opportunity to talk to you today about persistent identifiers, or PIDs in short, or PIDs in short, and their role in research. And today I would like to talk about which activities happen right now to pave the path for PID strategy, or as we call it, a roadmap for Germany. Yeah, if I already introduced myself, so my name is Antonia Schrader, full-time officer at the Helmholtz Open Science Office, and this is all for the introduction needed, I think. So let's start and let's jump right into it. Today I'd like to start my presentation with an introduction on the concept of persistent identifiers and show why they are so important for fair research data management and the scientific communication in general to get us all on the same level. Then I want to introduce you to the DFG-funded project, PID Network Germany, and tell you more about the activities planned here towards the national PID roadmap. And finally, I'm going to talk about our proposal, PID for NFDI, for the initialization phase of base for NFDI, which is currently under review for funding. Okay, then let's start. One of the things I like to start off always is the question of why we need PIDs. Which purpose do they have for research? And I think you all know that with the digitization of science and the globalization, the number of publications also in the preprint area, the amount of research data and other research output, such as research software, is constantly increasing. This makes research process way more complex. At the level of research, cultural and funding institution, this means that the management of research information, for example, for the indexing of publications, for subsequent performance measurement or reporting, has become more demanding. At the level of individual researcher, it remains important to be clearly linked to their own scientific publications, as the reputation system of science continues to focus on the number of citations, unfortunately. But as you might know, this is all very challenging when URLs, for instance, to a data set are invalid because maybe the data producer just put the data set into his or her cloud folder and then rename it or removed it to another place. Or the data producer or author of an article you like to cite has a very common name, such as Müller or Schmidt in Germany, or Garcia or Wang in other parts of the world. Or your institution has different names of their own names. So this is only a few challenges I would like to name here, but all these leads to uncertainty in order to find, access, and cite research data and their corresponding text publications, author, and affiliation. And for this reason, the FAIR principle asks for the assignment of PIDs, the description of data with rich, standardized, and machine-readable metadata, and its long-term availability, referencing to other resources with PIDs, licensing, and provenance information. Yeah, and speaking about references to other resources with PIDs, this is another great advantage of PIDs I'd like to elaborate on a little bit more. By making data sets citable, PIDs allow cross-referencing between, for example, a journal paper, like you see it on this slide here from Elsevier, which described the outcomes of the research based on the data sets. And as you can see it here, the data set is cited in the references. This is possible because the data set was published with the DOI on the GFSet repository. And on this slide, I think this is another great example of the interaction between DOIs, ORCID, and data. This is one of the Alfred Wegener Institute example, which is the Helmholtz Center for Polar and Marine Research. And the Alfred Wegener Institute has a portal for their expeditions, which is called Marine Data. This is the screenshot on the left side on the top. You can see here ships of the expedition, and with a click on the ship, another window will open with the data sets of this expedition, like, for example, the famous Mosaic expedition. And this data set, the other way around, is published on the data repository Pangea with the DOI. And Pangea has an ORCID integration, so it's clearly stated which scientist was involved in the data production. And I think this is a very good example which shows how PIDs can overcome boundaries of different platforms and create a real connection between the different publication platforms. And also I think it shows that, or the significant impact PIDs have on the entire life cycle of research data and which numerous advantages they have. So let's sum up, why are PIDs uniquely fantastic? PIDs ensure that all elements of research are uniquely identifiable and accessible by humans as well as by machines. They are permanent references to potentially any sort of digital or non-digital entity and enable the interlinking between those entities. PIDs contribute to the integrity of scientific communication and also to its reproducibility, where identifiability is a minimum requirement. The application of the FAIR principles as guideline for the implementation of open science also depends on PIDs. Making scientific activities and entities findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable is unthinkable without the features of PIDs. While the permanent identification of entities is crucial for the discoverability, verifiability, and quality control of research results and their attribution, the combined metadata describing the entities offer numerous added values. The integration and cross-linking of research objects through their metadata makes the research graph a reality, displaying at a glance all persons and institutions involved in a research process, the results as text, data, software, or processes or project events, giving a 360-degree view on linked open science. But it must be also clear, or should be clear, that persistence is only guaranteed by a permanent administration. Typically, it is an institution that administers identifiers and guarantees their uniqueness with a unique namespace on the web. DataCite, Crossref, the DOI Foundation, the EPIC Consortium, or ORCID Inc. are globally active organizations with already offering trustworthy, mature, and well-established PID infrastructures. In addition, there are more national-oriented systems, such as the namespace URN-NBNDE of the German National Library using the uniform resource name. And beyond this, there's a broad landscape of more locally oriented PID systems. They often focus on the needs of one subject area and are realized via the Handle system and the associated Handle net registry. However, there are new PID systems emerging too, and I only have here two examples, like the research activity identifier for research project processes, or the research resource identifier for biological samples, to name only two of the newer ones. And maybe have the feeling like most of the users have. So users are now confronted with a very wide variety of very different PID services with different emphases that serve different needs. And on the other side, institutions are faced with the challenges of having to support their researchers in dealing with those different PID systems, and in addition, having to adapt and expand their information systems, such like their CRIS system or repositories for this purpose. Approaches such as the PID forum help with internationally significant issues, but the void remains on the national level. And this is where the PID Network Germany project comes in. PID Network Germany started in March this year and is founded by the German Research Foundation, DFG. The project aims to establish a network of already existing and currently forming actors around the persistent identification of all research cycle entities. And also, we'd like to optimize the dissemination and networking of PID systems in Germany, and also want to foster the to embed them into international infrastructures such as knowledge graphs. And to achieve this, we will organize workshops and webinars on a regular basis and provide support and information about different PID use cases. And we already launched our website, which will serve as a central information and dialogue platform for the topic. Via our integrated blog and also our social media channels and mailing list, we provide further information and news on developments around PIDs in a national and international context. And another focus of the project will lie on the analysis of the current PID landscape in Germany. For this purpose, we will conduct a survey on the distribution, usage, implementation, and challenges of PIDs in publication and research information infrastructures in Germany. Results of the survey will serve as important input for the development of user stories, PID guidelines, and of course, our PID roadmap for Germany. And as I mentioned before, metadata are strongly linked to PIDs. Therefore, we aim to optimize the PID metadata in identifier and aggregation systems, in particular in the systems of the project partners, DataCite, German National Library, and BASE, which is operated by the University Library of University Bielefeld. And based on the findings from workshops, webinars, landscape analysis, and best practices, a PID roadmap for Germany, a strategy, will be developed and published as part of a participatory process. And of course, we will take impulses from the international efforts into account in order to ensure international compatibility. And while doing so, we will focus our activities on the following PID use cases. Here they are. So they are PIDs for research data, for scientific conferences, for instruments, for cultural objects and their contexts, for organization and projects, for persons, for physical objects, for repositories and publication platforms, for text publications, and PIDs for software. And in order to achieve our goals of the promotion and optimization of the PID landscape in Germany, PID for NFDI is another important building block. PID for NFDI is a proposal of founding persistent identifier services for the German National Research Data Infrastructure, NFDI, on behalf of the working group Persistent Identifier Services of the section Common Infrastructures of the NFDI. The proposal was submitted for the initialization phase of BASE for NFDI and is currently under review for funding. With DataCite, GWGD, the Helmholtz Open Science Office, and the TRB, the PID for NFDI consortium is made up, I think we can say it, of core players of the national and international PID service provider and developer community. Within the initialization phase, it is planned to lay the foundation for further phases through use cases analysis, requirements engineering, and concept development. Envisaged results can be used at it, but seamlessly lead to further development and integration activities. Regarding technical service implementation, PID for NFDI will follow a clear path of promoting the uptake by PID infrastructures and service providers, and will only develop and operate NFDI-specific services if necessary. With DataCite, the TRB, and the Helmholtz Open Science Office as 3 out of 4 applicants for PID for NFDI, there's a very strong overlap of organization and as well as persons with PID Network Germany. In contrast to PID for NFDI, PID Network has a broader focus in terms of targeted use cases and networks. However, since PID for NFDI addresses the RDM community and can take their requirements into account in more detail, we see PID for NFDI as an important and complementary building block to PID Network Germany, and we will ensure close collaboration. And with all these activities happening and hopefully going to happen, we hope to contribute to the promotion, optimization, and consolidation of the PID landscape in Germany and their metadata. And that's already all from my side. So I'm really looking forward to your support, to your suggestions, to your questions. And thank you for your attention. And I'm really looking forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you, Antonia Schrader, for presenting the current status of the project PID Network Germany. And also thank you to the audience on YouTube. And now we will switch to our Zoom. So the live stream on YouTube will end now. And yes, so thank you again, Antonia Schrader, for this really interesting talk and insights in this quite